I'm sure all of you realize how powerful Photoshop Elements can be when it comes to editing and enhancing our images. After all, we can take an image that comes out of the camera like this and create something that looks like this. It has a lot more atmosphere in here, and we've even added in some paper texture to give it an old world feel, and we've tinted it sepia tone. Now if we move over to the Layers panel and have a look at all the adjustment layers that have been used to create this image, I can hear a few of you saying, whoa, with all those adjustment layers, this has got to be a very complex technique. Let's go back to the original and I'll show you just how easy it is. Because inside the Photoshop Elements editor space, we have the ability to apply these types of changes and adjustments to our images very quickly and very easily. If you haven't used the Smart Brush before, well then that's what we're going to use in this tutorial in order to make some quick changes to our photo, end up with something that is very atmospheric and very presentable. I'm going to select the Smart Brush tool first, and if you haven't used the Smart Brush tool before, remember it does two things in one step. It selects and enhances. So before you start painting onto your photo to create a selection, you need to go up to the options bar and choose the type of change you want to make to your image. Now there's a bunch of categories here. By default, All Purpose is the one that opens up first, but you can see there's a whole range of different categories here, including some new ones for Photoshop Elements 10. Let's start with All Purpose, and I'm going to select Darker because we want to make part of the sky darker. So I'm just going to click and drag across the sky, and automatically you see that the tool just selects the sky. It's going to round these rock formations that you can see. It's selected part of the water, but it's done a pretty good job. Notice that we can change the mode that the tool works in. At the moment it's in Add to Selection, so if we paint on another part of the image, it will add to that part of the image. We can also choose Subtract from Selection to remove parts of the selection that we've inadvertently painted over parts we don't want to change. In this case, we want to add in some water changes as well. So we'll go through and add in the water, and you can see that very quickly we've been able to select the sky and the water. Now with some enhancement options that are used with the Smart Brush, we also have the ability to adjust and modify the enhancement. And we do that through the Adjustments panel. If the Adjustments panel isn't displayed, remember you can always go up to Window and then down to Adjustments and select Adjustments, and you'll see the Adjustments panel. Here you can see that brightness and contrast slider controls have been used to make the change to our image. So if I move the brightness and the contrast slider controls, I'm able to modify the effect that's being applied using my Smart Brush tool. Let's go back to the Layers panel now, select the background again, and this time I'm going to go in and choose a different option. This time I'm going to select Contrast High. Click the Close button from the panel there. Make my brush smaller using the left square brackets and just paint over the rock formation because I want the rock formation to have higher contrast. Paint over that part of the rock formation, this part here, and down here as well. Use my left square brackets again to make my brush tip even smaller. Paint over more parts of the rock formation. And you can see that very quickly and very easily we've added some contrast to that. Got a little bit of that enhancement selection going into the water there, so I'll just hold down the Alt or Opt key, change to Subtract from the selection to paint away that selection that we have there. We'll do it here as well. If you don't want to use keyboard shortcuts to do that, you can always go up to the options bar and just click on Subtract from Selection in order to do that. Remember, we can check to see if we can adjust or modify this Smart Brush adjustment by just going into the Adjustments panel, and hey presto, it's the same two controls that we had before. So we can adjust how much contrast there is and also adjust how much brightness there is as well. So that's looking pretty good. So we've got good contrast and good brightness happening there. And remember, we can apply our effects on top of each other as well. So if you've already applied the effect once, you can come back and apply it again. So I'm going to click on the background here, go back in and choose Darker again, and go in and brush into that sky again, just to make it even darker than what it was before. This time when I go and adjust that, we won't change the brightness too much, but we'll certainly change the contrast to try and make that sky more dominant. Not looking too bad. let's go back again, and we'll go and have a look at another adjustment that we can make. If we go through and have a look at, say, lighting, you'll see that there's some other adjustments that we can make here as well. And then we have things like portrait, reverse effects, nature, color, black and white, and artistic, and so on. All of these can be applied using the Smart Brush tool. Remember also, because these adjustments are being made with the mask, we can go and modify these adjustments using the mask. So for instance, if we want to add some of this adjustment into the sky region, we can go and select the brush tool, make sure that white is selected as our foreground color, and then adjust the opacity a little bit before we start brushing into the sky region. If we increase the opacity, we'll increase the effect, and you can see the changes being made, especially in the blue area there, to the sky. So we've got a much more dramatic sky happening. We can also paint that into the foreground, in through this sand area, and maybe a little bit across the rocks as well, where it was initially painted in. That's looking good. So we've modified the mask, which is used to apply the adjustment to the image. So all that is looking pretty good. But how do we get the sepia tone and the paper texture coming through? Let's go back to our Smart Brush tool and click on the background and go to the Textures heading. This is new for Photoshop Elements 10. And I'm just going to go and select Old Paper. Click out of that drop-down menu, make my brush bigger, and then brush over the image. Now this particular Smart Brush tool will actually be applied to the whole of the photo. Notice we've got a copy of our image being placed in the upper layer, so we can turn off the background now because we don't need it. And to just give us a clear background to work with, I'm going to click on the background layer and just add in a white layer here. So I've added in a new layer by clicking on the Create New Layer button at the bottom of the Layers panel. And then I'm going to go up to Edit and then Fill Layer and just choose White from the drop-down menu. Click OK, and you can see immediately how we have a white background with the new adjustment layer sitting on top. If we click onto the Move tool now, you can see a preview of just how good this image is now looking. If we want to go back and modify any of the Smart Brush adjustments, go back into the Smart Brush tool and notice that we have a set of icons here that we can use to select the particular layer and the particular adjustments that are being applied. When you select that icon, it will automatically select the layer associated with that Smart Brush adjustment, and you can then go back into your adjustments and make a change at that point to that adjustment.